Sitting quietly in millions of homes right now is an absolute evolutionary masterclass in biological engineering. It's a plant you've probably walked past 1,000 times. But today, in this explainer, we are fully decoding the Pothos plant. Because honestly, to conquer both the cutthroat, hyper-competitive canopy-covered ecosystem of the tropical rainforest and the completely stagnant, dry, artificial air of a modern apartment building, well, a living organism needs way more than just good luck. It requires an anatomy of sheer, undeniable invincibility. A biological vault, locked tightly against death. I mean, really think about that for a second. To truly grasp the secret behind the Pothos' functional immortality, we have to look way, way past its glossy, harmless surface. Imagine zooming in right now. We're plunging past that thick, waxy cuticle layer on the outside of the leaf, breaking right through the rigid cellular walls, and revealing a glowing, highly detailed microscopic city. It's this whole matrix of cells pumping with vital fluids, reacting to invisible environmental cues, and just fighting to stay alive. That bustling, invisible world is where the real story actually begins. So what does it actually take to conquer both the massive scale of the wild rainforest and, the confined corner of your living room? How on earth does it survive both of these extreme environments? Today, we're looking at 3 deadly environmental trials that the Pothos has explicitly evolved to survive. We're going to examine exactly how its microscopic anatomy tackles physical destruction, light starvation, and total dehydration. Let's step right into that first high-stakes biological challenge. All right, let's dive straight into Trial 1, physical destruction, and what we call the decentralized failsafe. Out in the wild rainforest, or hey, even in an overwatered ceramic pot sitting on your windowsill, the ultimate fatal threat to almost any plant is a severed or rotting main root system, right? Usually, if those bottom roots die, the whole plant is a goner. But the blueprint of the Pothos' invincibility starts right here, with the node. If you look closely at a pothos stem, you'll see this unassuming, tiny brown knot-like bump at every single intersection. Now, for most plants, roots stay down in the dark, damp earth, and stems stay high up in the air. The pothos, it completely refuses to accept this boundary. Tucked inside every single one of these little bumps is a cluster of dormant, highly adaptable stem cells. And the very second they sense ambient moisture or the touch of a rough surface, these sleeping cells trigger an aggressive, almost violent growth cascade. It's literally like a hidden superpower just waiting to be unleashed. Within mere hours, a thick, white aerial root will burst right out from that bump. In the wild, these act as incredible anchors, literally cementing the heavy vine to sheer rock faces or slippery tree bark using this microscopic natural bioadhesive. But here's where it brilliantly illustrates the sheer adaptability of the pothos. If that main root system we just talked about rots away in stagnant water or maybe gets severed by a passing animal, these aerial roots instantly shift functions. They stop acting like structural anchors and immediately become active drinking straws. They start pulling vital moisture and nutrients directly from the humid air or the damp bark they're clinging to. It's just wild. Which brings us to this absolutely incredible number, 50. Because of this brilliant localized node system, a wild pothos vine isn't dependent on a single root base at the forest floor. Nope. It has become a decentralized network of individual survival pods. You could theoretically take a 60-foot wild pothos vine, chop it into 50 completely separate pieces, and you haven't killed the plant at all. No way. You have simply multiplied it. You've created 50 brand new individual organisms completely ready to grow on their own. Moving right along to Trial 2, light starvation. Let's look at what we call the beautiful defect. When a pothos is yanked out of the bright, dynamic wild and shoved into a human home, it faces an intense, fundamentally different anatomical challenge. The sunlight indoors is merely a fraction of the intensity found out in nature. But to cope with our own indoor aesthetics, humans have actively bred specific mutations of the plant, heavily favoring these striking white and cream leaf patterns. This is known as variegation. We absolutely love the way it looks in our living rooms, but biologically speaking, it's kind of a beautiful defect, because those stunning, creamy white patches contain absolutely no chlorophyll. At a microscopic cellular level, those white sections are completely blind to the sun and cannot perform photosynthesis at all. So that begs the obvious question: how on earth does a plant survive with blind leaves? In almost any other plant species, a high level of variegation, like what you'd see in a heavily marbled leaf, is an absolute death sentence in a low-light environment like an apartment. The plant simply can't produce enough energy to feed its own mass, and it starves. But the pothos, true to form, once again refuses to die. It actually pulls this off by becoming the ultimate energy minimalist. First off, it completely alters the efficiency of its stomata. Those are the microscopic pores on the underside of its leaves, regulating its internal gas exchange with absolute surgical precision. Second, it tightens up its water retention and literally stalls its vertical growth. It decides to save its energy rather than pushing out new, weak leaves. And third, it enters this state of metabolic hibernation that forces whatever remaining green patches it does have into extreme overdrive. It uses these highly efficient light-harvesting protein complexes that can capture the absolute faintest bounce of light. We're talking about surviving on the scattered weak beam of a distant window, or even just pulling energy from a basic overhead office fluorescent bulb. It literally squeezes life out of almost nothing. And finally, we arrive at trial 3, total dehydration. This is what we call the resurrection trick. Okay, so we've looked at physical destruction and light starvation, but severe, prolonged drought, that is the final and most dramatic threat. This is a condition where most other houseplants will permanently drop their leaves, or their internal structures just completely collapse and they die. The pothos survives this through an incredible mechanism called turgor pressure. Think of turgor pressure exactly like water filling up a balloon. It's the internal cellular water force that keeps a plant rigid and standing upright. While other plants suffer permanent structural cell damage when that water balloon deflates, the pothos cell walls are incredibly unique. They are reinforced with a highly flexible pectin matrix. It acts as an exceptionally adaptable cellular scaffolding that can bend all the way down without ever breaking. And the result of that super flexible scaffolding is this shocking statistic. The pothos can lose up to 60% of its internal water content. 60%. It will collapse its shape entirely into a sad, lifeless droop. To the human eye, it looks utterly defeated, completely dead to the world. And yet, its microscopic cellular framework remains entirely intact, just waiting quietly in the dirt. Because the moment you finally remember to pour water back into that dry soil, it performs an unbelievable resurrection trick. In an accelerated burst of movement, those flexible cells reinflate exactly like a series of microscopic hydraulic pumps. The stems aggressively stiffen back up, the leaves snap back upward, turgid and full of life, completely and utterly undamaged by the drought that would have easily killed a lesser plant. It's amazing to watch. Which brings us to the final part, part 4, the biological vault, an evolutionary masterclass. So, from its shape-shifting nodes that act as decentralized survival pods to its indestructible cell walls that endure massive water loss, surviving these incredibly harsh trials gave the plant the flawless evolutionary tools it needed. And the craziest part? That rugged anatomy was really just the starting point. Armed with those deeply ingrained survival mechanisms, the pothos began to fracture into an astonishing array of different visual lineages. It created the sprawling family tree of beautiful cultivars we love today. You have the vibrant, splotched yellow of the golden pothos, contrasting with the stark, heavily mutated snow-white patches of the marble queen. It leveraged its biological invincibility to ultimately take over the global design world, thriving in millions of homes, offices, and shopping malls worldwide. Which leaves us with one final thought today. You probably walk past a pothos every single day, maybe even water one sitting right on your own desk, completely unaware of the aggressive shape-shifting biology happening at a microscopic level just beneath its surface. So it makes you wonder, what other invisible superpowers are hiding in the completely ordinary objects sitting right in front of you? Keep looking closer and keep questioning what you see.